All right, it's 4 o'clock and I will call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, January 14th, 2025. Just a real quick, since we have a lot of students here today. So the way we set up this meeting is our city council meetings on Tuesdays, and we have it twice a month now. The first 2.5 hours are what they call Committee of the Whole. So the city council meets together with staff and we discuss items within the city that we want to look at for the future or for stuff that's coming up quickly. At 6:30, we will adjourn. I don't know if you guys want to stay that long. You can make that decision on your own. And then at 7 o'clock, we'll have the regular city council meeting. So as far as your assignments go, I don't think you need to stay that long. But it's fun to be here and have you guys here to watch and listen to us today. So we will start today with one of our favorite topics, 90th South, right? So today we have Brian and his team to talk about the concepts that have been sent to us. I think most of us have seen the concepts there, and we'll have the discussion there. So Brian, I'll turn the time over to you, and if you want to kind of lead us into where you guys are at and how we can discuss moving forward with this project.
Great. Thanks, Council Chair and Council.
Oh, wait, real quick, I wanted to recognize Kayleen Whitelock is now our Vice Chair, and we will make that official tonight in our 7 o'clock meeting. Oh, and also Zach Jacob, our other council member. Is he online with us, Warren? He's going to join us online.
He's not online yet.
Okay, so Councilmember Jack Jacob. Zach Jacob is not here and will join us online.
Down, but it's just going to the
Okay, go ahead, Brian. Thanks.
Thanks, Council Chair and Council. Back in the September timeframe when we were going over the Transportation Master Plan for approval, subject got brought up on the 90th South, our new Bingham Highway connection, along with Duck Ridge connecting into that road. It was requested from council that they wanted to have some different concepts come back, review on what's going to work best for the city and for the residents. We hired WCG. This is Jeremy Searle, WCG. His firm is the firm that did the Transportation Master Plan. So we had them reach out. We reached out to them. We had them model 12 different designs. We just want to get some feedback. Currently, we have a environmental impact study open right now for 90th South. This is part of that environmental impact. So we need to decide which route we need to go. We got to move that environmental impact forward so we can do that connection. We're open to the feedback, so please let us know. We'll turn the time over to Jeremy and he can go over his presentation and what they found in modeling these.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Great background there. So again, my name is Jeremy Searle with WCG. We've been working with the city on this for a little while now. This is my favorite topic, so I'm excited to be here and to talk about it. I also have.
Can I take 1 second? I just heard,
please.
Zach Jacob did join us on Zoom, so just to make a note that Zach Jacob is online with us. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Great, no, thank you. I also have Dave here, my coworker. He can give details on technical aspects of these designs. But I want to expand a little bit on the background here. We did also do a feasibility study on that. And as we did that, we brainstormed and thought through a lot of different options, and you'll see those tonight. In the past, we've kind of narrowed those down because some of these you'll see, there are some problems, with some of these options, right? And so we had kind of narrowed those down. But with the feedback that we got, that you wanted to see all these different options, then we're showing those to you tonight. So we'll talk about those. So we're going to start with number one, and we'll just kind of go through these quickly. They're in your council packets. I hope you've had a chance to look at those. But the option one is the no build. Okay, we just leave it how it is. There's obviously some issues with this. We did a study on this. Without this connection, you see some very dramatic failures in the transportation infrastructure surrounding this. Some major queuing and delays around this. There's a lot of growth happening on the west side. I know that's not news to anyone in this room, but there's a lot happening out there, and there needs to be these connections. 90th South in particular is one that has been planned for many years, and in fact has been on both the city's master plan and the WFRC regional transportation plan since the late 90s. So this has been 30 years in the making. So,
May I ask a question about the no bill?
yes, please.
I've been led to believe that even if West Jordan City did not want UDOT to connect 90th South through that intersection, UDOT would just go ahead and do it anyway. That's what I've been led to believe. Now, I'm not suggesting anything about what the council feels as a whole is going to happen. Can you talk about that a little bit?
That's a great question. So New Bingham into 90th is a UDOT road, right? They have jurisdiction over that. There have been discussions in the past about when this connection goes through, that potentially there could be a jurisdictional transfer and that UDOT would control 90th all the way to Bacchus Highway. And that West Jordan would assume control of that piece of New Bingham, that diagonal. As far as, I don't know how to answer exactly if UDOT would force it or not, but I think Nate has some thoughts.
I agree. I don't know if UDOT would force it or if they would do it themselves. They know it's been on the regional transportation master plan for many years.
Yeah.
And they've planned their network along with the city. And if we decided we weren't going to do it, I think it would definitely jeopardize our ability to obtain funding for other things.
Well, and
To fix if it would cause problems elsewhere, and they would probably be very hesitant to help fund the problems that are elsewhere to solve them.
Exactly. UDOT's been counting on this connection for a long time.
we would also lose our voice as to how that connection happens. So,
Right.
anyway, thank you.
Great question. Okay, so as I mentioned, we had done this planning concept study for this, looked at a bunch of different options. The one that came out of it that is recommended both by UDOT and the city staff and through the analysis that we completed is this one, option 2. You can see the New Bingham kind of swings up, hits 90th South at a 90-degree angle. 90th South, of course, goes through, and Duck Ridge ties in at a 90-degree there. So we have a new signalized intersection. We have recommendations for turn lane configuration and turn lane storage lengths and all that. So, and then of course, the north end of New Bingham ties in just across the bottom of the park there.
So on all of these examples.
Yeah.
Maybe I can point to it easier, but on all of these examples, this will go away. Is that correct?
We will go through some. There's some that leave it there, but I need to make clear, UDOT's standards for intersection spacing do not allow intersections that close, and they do not support one that close. And so yes, in the majority of these options, that goes away for that reason.
So this would end up just being an extension of the park or whatever we did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions on this?
Thank you.
All right, option 3. So this was a large roundabout here. This was actually studied pretty extensively. There are benefits to roundabouts. They're safer, they calm traffic and things. But as we studied this, the travel demand or the traffic through here is so heavy, so high, that a roundabout just wasn't going to function well here. There's too much going on. It just wasn't going to work. And as we looked at that, operationally it didn't work. And there's some complications with that, with homes and different things. So in the end, this was not recommended by us or city staff or UDOT.
No, I recommend it.
Thank you.
A few days ago, this council heard me speak in defense of roundabouts. In this case, a lone roundabout, I am not going to speak for it. I would speak against it as well. Roundabouts work in concert with other roundabouts, creating flow. This would not. This would be a log jam. I think it's a terrible idea.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. And I'm usually a big proponent of roundabouts.
So did you go to the Bill Baranowski Traffic Engineering School?
I didn't, but I know Bill and he's also a big proponent of roundabouts.
Yes, he was.
So I agree though. In the right context, roundabouts are awesome. This is not the right context for that. All right. Okay, option 4. So this is actually very similar to our recommended option. It still has the new signalized intersection there at Duck Creek, but the one change is we shift it to the east just slightly so that we can have, I'll call it an alleyway to these last couple of homes here on Duck Creek. And what that does is it gives them access, easier access to their homes. So they're not caught up in those queues that can form behind the signal when people are waiting for the red light. So this is kind of a way to help appease a couple of those neighbors that may be concerned about this.
A long driveway.
It's basically a long driveway. Thank you, Mayor. I do want to point out a couple things. One, obviously, this would be a little more expensive. It takes a little bit more land to accomplish. 2, a collector with driveways on it, meeting at a signal with an arterial is not an unusual thing. There's dozens of examples of that across Salt Lake Valley and many here in West Jordan itself. So to have a collector road with driveways on it next to a signal like that is not unusual. It's not uncommon. And doesn't necessarily necessitate doing something different. However, if you wanted to help appease those neighbors, this is an option. Any questions?
This is one that and I represent this area in this report. It's one that I'm more in favor of.
I have a few questions. This is the only one I really had questions on because it seemed to be in line with everything for the most part. One regarding financial, what my question for that one, for the financial question. As, let's say we go ahead with number 4, are there, sorry, I had it in here somewhere. Where is it? 2 seconds. Is there strategies that we can work on? Let's say this is approved that would help remain financially viable during this implementation as we work on this one? Because you said this one was the most expensive, but it's also the one that meets.
Sorry, let me clarify that.
Okay.
It's a little bit more expensive than the preferred. That doesn't mean it's out of.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure that, because I was confused when you said that. I was like, oh, but is there ways we can?
Sorry, no, I'll show other options that are way more expensive.
Oh, I don't want to see that.
Yeah, no, this can certainly be done. All I'm saying is it's a little bit more expensive than the first option that I showed you. But it can certainly be done.
When do we expect that environmental study to be finished?
Great question. So that is in process now. We've put it on hold just a little bit so that we can get your feedback and make sure that we can move forward. Dave, our schedule, I believe, is by the end of this year. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, with the environmental, we have started that process, and part of being able to finalize that process is looking at what footprint we're evaluating. So that's why we're meeting, partially why we're meeting here tonight, is to figure out which of these options we want to vet through that environmental process. But Jeremy, to answer your question, yeah, it's probably 6 to 8 months for that environmental.
Would you like to sit like a teacher chair and sit by Jeremy?
I am totally fine right here, but thank you.
I'm not turning this way each time you talk. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Okay, so let's say we move forward with option 4. What are some mitigation measures beyond signage and enforcement that can improve resident satisfaction, like with noise, safety, and things like that? Because I know residents are really concerned about the safety aspect, for whatever we change on here.
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's lots of different aspects to that, right? In lots of different ways. One of the things that we studied on there was the speed limit on 90th. We want to keep that at 40, be consistent with the corridor, and enforce that. Another that people were concerned about with safety is pedestrians and crossing, right? And I understand that's a key thing. So with this, we would have a signalized crossing, so people would have a light to cross with, so that would help protect pedestrians here. You would have a similar signal over on 6400 and 90th. That's planned for the future once it meets volume warrants. And so that would allow pedestrians to cross safely there too. And that also leads up to the school, Antelope, so they could.
But realistically,
Yes.
and this is what I've heard from the neighbors out there. Realistically, a signalized crossing is going to isolate that neighborhood in the triangle because nobody's gonna go out and try to cross the 90th South. I mean, you see, I mean,
I don't think you should use the word nobody, but.
Yeah, I don't either.
I get the
because
point. I
We
get your
do it
point.
at 90th and 40th.
there, let me say that relatively few people
Thank you.
like crossing 90th.
Yeah.
And so are there, no matter what option we pick, is there a way to do crossings better at 90th than just say, oh, take your chances about crossing a signal and hope you don't get hit by somebody running a red light?
It's a great question, and I understand that no one wants to cross a busy 5-lane road, right? I mean, it happens all the time, right? At 90th and many other neighborhoods across the state.
Cross 90th to 22nd, about 5 times and or 10 times it's expected. So
Yeah.
it happens.
As far as safety measures for that, we plan to do improved lighting, obviously at the signals, so you can see that in all times of day. We can look at what's called leading pedestrian intervals. That's a signal timing term to where rather than if you've been at the signal and crossed, typically you push the button and you go at the same time as vehicles that are going the same direction as you, right? A leading pedestrian interval, actually you can program it so that the pedestrian starts a couple of seconds before the vehicles. And so they get out into the crosswalk after everybody's stopped and you can see them and they're out there and prominent before the vehicles start going. So that helps reduce crashes from like right turners or left turners into the crosswalk. And so that's one safety measure that we can look at to help improve safety as well.
Given that this is 90th, there's probably no way to do the middle of the road refuge.
Probably not, because we're using that space for left turn pockets. Those work well at like T intersections when you have some extra space there for those, you know.
What about
refuges.
what about the intersection that's between the new one and 6400 West that connects the two neighborhoods? It's right there on the map.
Yep.
Could there be a raised cross there with a refuge?
Except there wouldn't be a light there to stop the traffic.
Exactly.
Could put one in.
So
Crosswalks type light.
we looked at this. It doesn't meet the warrant criteria for a full signal. There are federal criteria in the MUTCD for that when it's warranted. It would not meet that. The
What
volumes
about just
are
like the flashing?
So there's a couple different flashers. You've heard of a hawk signal, right? Typically, you don't put hawk signals at intersections because it only controls the main line. So usually those are kind of mid-block crossings. That is something that could be considered, but we'd probably recommend it be offset a little from the intersection. There's also things like RRFBs or rectangular rapid flashing beacons. Those are kind of the flashers maybe that you've seen the overhead. That's also an option, but honestly, UDOT, if they look at this, they're going to say you have a signal on either side that's already a protected pedestrian crossing. We would encourage people to go to that.
Okay.
That's typically what UDOT's response would be in this situation.
What is a long-term outlook for that neighborhood intersection? Is it going to be a right in, right out kind of thing? Have an island in the middle?
Great question. We studied this through 2050, and it's still operated, I believe, at level service D into 2050, meaning we don't see a reason at this point to put a raised median across. I don't want to say that that would absolutely never happen, but operationally, we're not seeing that. So UDOT may look at that. If there's a lot of crashes there, they may try and do something to mitigate that. But at this point, I don't see a recommendation. Great questions.
Regarding, now that the 8600 South Bridge is open.
Yeah.
Do we need to consider conducting additional traffic modeling to confirm the impact of option 4 on Duck Ridge Road?
Great question. So when we did our feasibility study, we included traffic modeling with that bridge open and all the way through 2050. Okay. And when you say modeling, you may be thinking of counts.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that as well. But when we model into the future. And we look at how things will operate in the future with with new homes built out there, and new growth and new roads connected, or the new bridge and all that. So we modeled that.
That's all theory. It's not in practicality now that it's open, because it just opened.
True, right? And so we are kind of projecting to the future, and we use the best that we have. Nestor just did a traffic count out there, which is awesome. And Nestor, I'm stealing your thunder here, but he did a great job with this. That bridge is already picking up, what, 3,500?
And I feel like it's gonna keep, yes.
Exactly. So people are using it. And in fact, the key thing there is Duck Ridge volumes decreased pretty dramatically. So people, instead of having to come down to 90th to cross,
Fine.
they're going across the bridge. And so that's success. I think that's awesome. That's exactly what you wanted. And hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure that we have it out there.
Yeah. Nestor, did I miss anything on that?
The traffic counts on Duck Ridge were about 1,500 cars a day during summer season.
Yeah.
And the recent counts dropped to 300. So most of the traffic that was created seasonally is people going to the rec center, to the sport fields after 5, after 6 o'clock. The traffic that was going southbound now is going north. It has been a shift because of the bridge.
And were these done at various times of the day, or what time of the day? Like, because I know, like, coming here at this 4 o'clock time, I had no idea school coming out would take a lot longer for me to get here today versus when we had our meetings at 6.
It was an 84-hour count, so we only 3 counts to average 3 full days
Okay.
to average the daily traffic, and taking out 267, 280 cars, 300 was the highest average. Very low volume traffic.
My other questions are for council, but except for, let's say we start with this on option 4, what can we do effort-wise to assure the residents in the neighborhoods during the construction that things will run smoothly and not create quite the havoc like some of the other constructions, like the Bingham West? So basically, I want to make sure that as we start construction, the neighbors aren't going to be filling up our inboxes.
Sure, and when we do a project like this, we always try to communicate with the resident, give them a heads up. And we monitor the contractor too. We have inspectors that stay on those guys and make sure they're interfering with people's livelihoods.
One of the differences is it will be our project, not another
That's a good
activity.
point. That's a very good point. And I think, well, actually, I do have one more question. This is partially for the council. Would something like a public workshop or our town hall be useful before the final approval to help address any remaining residents or council concerns?
We did have a
But we have
public workshop.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too. That's why I wanted to throw it out there just in case we're covering all the bases.
We did have a workshop with residents early on when we went over
This was presented when we adopted the master plan.
Yeah.
This is really just a slight tweak to what was already publicly discussed and. So.
Just making sure we're covering our bases and not.
I think it wouldn't hurt to have one where, and this is your area, but an informational one. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
Not so much of that they're coming in to tell us how they want to change, but more an informational one, what they can expect, what the impact is, if there'll be closures, when those might be, how we'll alert them to it.
Have a food truck. Right.
That's built into our environmental document. Have a public meeting on that. So that's.
great
part of the
news.
EIS. Huh? Correct. On food trucks.
I know.
Yeah, that'll be part of our.
Okay.
Do we need to allocate some money so that we can buy a couple more Blackstones for the mayor to cook hot dogs?
No, I'm serious. Like, I want to make sure we get as many people out.
I know that Nestor and others held several
Neighborhood
meetings. So that has been, and yes, it is part of the environmental study as well to do in their own.
All right, due to time, let's move over to
Sorry.
the other options. We need to The other
thank
options
you.
were, you had like 12, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll try to be faster. Thank you for fixing that. That was awesome, good timing. Okay.
Brian, as we go, do you folks want us to tell you yes or no? We might consider this one. No, we
Yeah,
were
we
considering
just,
that
we
one.
just want some feedback, so we have. But we got the support to get this going.
Good news, I don't have any other questions on the other ones.
So when do you want that feedback? Do you want it?
Well, we would like to have it today, so.
No, I mean, as we're going, I mean, we just had number 4.
Yeah.
We just had number 4. If we like that, do you want us to
Yeah,
say?
that,
So,
yes, that would work.
Where's my number 1?
so if I were going to pick the ones that UDOT and staff supported, if I were to pick the one that I like the best, it's not one that city and staff supported. And so that's probably an out. Which is, by the way, the next one coming up, I like better. But if I were going to pick one that both the staff and UDOT could support, it would be this one. Because like I told you before we started the meeting, I think with the area between the signal and the intersection where those lines cross, we can put some good traffic calming measures, some bulbs, or a mini traffic circle or something that help keep traffic slow going through that neighborhood. And so I would prefer this one because I think we can do that better and it protects the houses at the end of Duckridge. That we don't want them right on the corner of 90th South and Signalville.
So I've heard a few people say this is their preferred option. Are there 4 of you that you'd be okay moving forward with this?
Can we
And then
talk about the other 7 options that we haven't gotten to before we vote on something?
Yeah, let's look at all of them.
Yeah, and I know Zach has some questions on 5, so present 5 for us, and then Zach, go ahead with your question.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so here's option 5. For the south end, where New Bingham ties in, very similar to previous examples. What this does is it just cul-de-sacs Duck Ridge and then connects around the park.
I have sorry if I'm stopping you in your tracks,
Go
but
ahead.
in this plan, why does there need to be a signal going off of 90th onto New Bingham? Why can't it just be like Old Bingham Highway and 90th South?
Well, that's a great question. The volumes here are significantly high, right? You have so many, you meet the warrants for it, 1, but 2, operationally, it will not function well without the signal. It will
Too many
fail.
cars.
Yep, and 3, I'll just say, UDOT just studied Old Bingham and that also warrants a signal now, so. And I missed that field review, Mister, but we should talk about that. But yeah, so it functionally, it will not work without the signal.
Can you explain the conflict that I'm seeing on the top 2 bullets and pros and cons? One says no cut through traffic on Duck Ridge Road, and the other one says increased cut through traffic in the Duck Ridge neighborhood. Can you explain that?
Yeah.
It's 2 different things.
Yeah, similar ideas, but different. Okay, so what this means is you're not going to have traffic from 90th or New Bingham going up Duck Ridge. However, you've now cut off the Duck Ridge neighborhood in this area, their access to 90th. And so they have to cut through the neighborhood and all these streets to go around to get to 90th. Does that make sense? So there's pros and cons to that, right? And I know those probably weren't worded correctly, but there is still cut through traffic through the neighborhood because now they can't have that direct access to 90th.
Okay, but in that case, then wouldn't that cut through traffic be mostly inter-neighborhood traffic as opposed to intra-neighborhood traffic? In other words, that traffic now that you're increasing is from homes through the neighborhood to get out of the neighborhood and vice versa, but not more regional traffic that you might get going up Duck Ridge from 90th to connect to 86 or 8200 and all the way up.
You are correct. My clarification of that is typically it usually is the local traffic that is the cut through anyway. There's not a lot of reason for people necessarily to use this to cut through regionally because there's much better routes and ways to do that, right? You've got, if you're going regionally, you've got Mountain View Corridor, you've got 6400, you've got Bacchus Highway. There's better ways to go north-south than Duck Ridge. And so people aren't generally gonna cut through here. This serves as a neighborhood connection. And so whether it's the neighbors coming out to 90th or it's the neighbors cutting through their own neighborhood to go around to 90th, it's generally the same people that are doing it.
So I'm personally against this one because I feel like there needs to be some kind of connection onto 90th South.
Agreed. And I'm totally in your camp on that one. I think there needs to be connectivity is very important and neighborhood.
I think another point is you get a lot of the event traffic that are going to the sports fields, and they're gonna be cutting through these neighborhoods to work their way to the fields.
Yeah, good point. And that could be more of a regional draw, like you said. Good point.
But again, there's better ways to get there, to go with the same logic. Taking the bridge over 86 is a better way to get there than going 90th and then cutting through the neighborhood to get to the fields.
Not if you're coming from the south. Right, so.
Yeah.
Well, if you're coming
Okay.
from the south, it still makes sense. Well, yeah, it still makes sense to go to 86 and come in.
Any other questions on this one? I know I was told I need to hurry through these, so I'm trying. Okay, I'll keep going. Option number 6. So this cul-de-sac's Duck Ridge, but connects it over to the north end of New Bingham up through the park. There's a few issues with this. One, it puts the intersection at 90th at a skew. That's not great. UDOT doesn't support that. And what it does is it forces people to use the connection through the park. And that's where we have a lot of kids playing and crossing and going through there. And it's not necessarily what we want to encourage. And again, cuts off that connectivity with Duck Ridge, which, as we talked about, has its own issues with cut through.
I don't think I could support this one.
So let me just clarify what you just said. We would rather put traffic on the street in front of homes than through the park.
The best thing to do is provide as many options as possible so that we spread the traffic out. What happens when we start cutting things off is we condense traffic into single areas or single arterials or collectors, and that causes problems. And so when we provide options here, people can use Duck Ridge, they can use the road through the park, they can spread that out. And so not a single road is carrying all that demand.
Okay.
All right, option 7. So again, kind of another configuration here. This again connects over to the north end of New Bingham, and Duck Ridge kind of swings over and tees in. This provides that connectivity, but still has that issue with the skew. Obviously takes a lot more property and cost to do that. Let's see.
This one's actually my favorite. This one's the closest one to the design that I came up with.
Okay.
This one seems very similar to 4, but I guess it has that angled intersection.
It does, has that skew.
Well, what this one does is it meets to the right instead of just going through and meeting farther up. It's really what it.
Cost-wise, between 4 and 7,
This one would be more expensive.
by a little, by a lot.
That's a good question. Dave, you got any thoughts there?
I guess it depends on your definition of a little or a lot. I think with the,
Well, we're already talking millions for a road, so
right.
few 100,000.
Man, I don't want to be on record for throwing out a number here. But yes, I would say between probably $300,000 to $900,000.
I think we need to focus more on design than cost. I mean, I understand it's always a cost issue, but we want to get the design right, and
It's a one-time cost and it's forever design.
exactly.
Yeah, but if I'm okay with both of them, I want to know my cost difference, and I'm okay with both of them.
Can you talk about the pros and cons between 7 and 4?
Yeah.
As far as design goes, not.
So, and Dave, I'll have you chime in if you want, but the biggest thing is the skew at the intersection, right? That does not meet UDOT standards, and they're supportive of that. 2, The other one. Well, this one's got that intersection with Duck Ridge, right there. That's fairly,
Basically takes the traffic off Duck Ridge.
yeah, it directs people more toward the park. Yeah, I mean, that, in summary, that's it.
Yeah, it really does, doesn't it? Because you'd have to turn left to get onto Duck Ridge instead of just going straight onto Duck Ridge.
Yep.
Yeah,
But they'd be fine with the residents would be fine with that.
sure.
One
So,
other difference that I will point out between option 7 that we're looking at right now and option 4. Option 7 introduces essentially another little intersection. We have more purple lines crossing here than we do in 4. So option 7 that we're looking at has 2 purple lines crossing, whereas option 4 only has 1. So it's another conflict point that we're introducing.
Yeah, good.
But I think the conflict we're discussing are those 3 homes, and they'll be fine with that, as opposed to having that be the main thoroughfare.
But a conflict point can be used to calm traffic too, right?
Slows people down.
Slows people down, we can do.
Put a roundabout.
Well, yeah, we could do roundabouts, there's small roundabouts, because that slows the traffic down, or the bulb outs, or other things. My question on number 7 was, and obviously it would take more land, but you could do this so that the road doesn't skew at the intersection, right? You could go intersection north, and then the road curves around to the right more, so that it's straight off the intersection and curves around to the proposal, right?
But I think the challenge there, as you start laying that actually out, is you start to hit, you have to use this space in front of these homes. And once you're doing that, then you're basically using Duck Ridge. There's just not enough room there to do both and move that.
But that's what that other option kind of does anyway, is that it's that alley that goes in front of the house with the road.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So basically design it just like 4, but then have it swing over at the top.
And then that, it would swing over, so it's not going straight through, it would send the message, and then you have to make the conscious decision to go left or right.
Seriously. Yeah, we could lay something out like that.
Because what it would be a hybrid of 4 and 7.
Yeah. Kind of a mix of the two.
Because, I mean, I think, you know, when I'm looking at these, I discarded this because city and staff didn't like it. But I like the idea of the road meeting a loop road and having to go left or right. So that you make a conscious decision, either go to Duck Ridge or go to Ronwood Parkway. And so I would rather have, personally, rather have 2 intersections on that road. Just because I think we could use it better for traffic calming and traffic signaling. When I say signaling, you're now entering a residential neighborhood, this isn't a freeway. And so that's where I'd be going with that, is that I actually like the multiple intersections, but
Public safety wise though, we're now creating a dead end, not a circle. So what does that do for fire?
Good question.
What?
Sometimes it's all apply on the end of the street.
I think there's a fire limit for how long these little alleyways can be. And I don't remember that exact number. 150 feet. Yes, we'd be pushing that for sure. So
That would be a
Without a
concern.
But this is the
We had a
kind of,
turnaround down there to be long.
yeah, okay.
but this is the kind of street that you have like on 13th East, that where it bends around to Highland, and there's the secondary street just west of 13th, right? And it dead ends as 13th turns, goes funky.
I think that circles on those company.
And I think it's kind of a circle, but it does the same thing.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, that's good feedback. Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other thoughts or comments on this? Okay. This is pretty simple. It just leaves the north end of New Bingham where it is. That would be a right in, right out. As I mentioned before, this does not meet UDOT standards. They're not in support of this.
So would they prohibit us from doing it?
They do not support it.
Which is funny because they just built on 215 in and out just like that. It's funny that they don't support something like
It's
that.
not that it's not, that they don't support right in, right outs, right? They're fine with that. It's just so too close to the signal, their issue. Yeah. Nate?
Being that we're using federal funds, we've got like $5 million in federal funds. So if it doesn't meet UDOT standards, then
The federal money
it would
goes
move
away.
forward.
But the 215 is a federal highway and they did live there.
Where's that at?
They just created on 47th South that in all those buildings, you can get off the freeway instead of going to 47th, you can get off and get on. So it's just interesting, the rules for us, but they just created something just like that on a major highway. So anyway, let's go to the other options real quick.
Yeah, we'll go through these quick. Again, this is kind of your standard option, just cul-de-sacking the road up through the park. So rather than connecting it across the Duck Ridge. Again, inhibits connectivity, inhibits access to the park. Not in support of that. This one actually shifts the intersection to the west, goes through the Catholic Church property here. There's a number of issues with this, including intersection spacing, property acquisition. This one is not supported by UDOT or us or the city.
What if this one was kind of combined? In other words, what if the right in, right out was at the existing right in, right out, so to speak, on going into the park on Ron Wood, on New Bingham Highway, on the north side of New Bingham Highway?
This one?
Well, no, go back. So you put the intersection to the west like that, but cul-de-sac Duck Ridge and make the right in, right out over at New Bingham Highway, and then bring Duck Ridge over to that point. So kind of like a combination of this one and number 7.
So part of the issue here is the access spacing here with the neighborhood. That's too close, and that will not meet UDOT standards. And so
that's what I'm saying. So move the right in, right out to the east one intersection. So you saw the light to the west, now you're separating it back out.
He's saying that that intersection is still pretty close to the.
He can't see when you're pointing.
I know, and I don't know a better way. Remind me this is blurry. Remind me the name of this. I can't remember. I should know that.
So
650 west.
what I'm saying is take the right in, right out to the east, where you can now turn in to go to the dog park and the Ron Wood and the whatever else is over there.
Yeah.
That's the right in, right out. You bring Duck Ridge around to that point. Like,
I see what you're saying. That fixes the access spacing to the east, but it doesn't fix it to the west, to the neighborhood. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah, I got you. So you're worried about that spacing as well. Okay, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this, but this is kind of an urban interchange or grade separated with the bridge through here. This cost would be tremendous. You would be taking out homes and buildings right away. I don't think this is a viable option. And then this one similarly, we're going through that big brand new building. I just don't think this is a viable option either with the impacts here.
Just making a tunnel through the building.
With enough money, I guess you can do whatever you want,
I
right?
have an option 13 to put up there. Alan, can you put that up?
Could you,
again, or-
you need to, you sent it to Warren, but he can't.
I didn't send it. Can we just put up Google Maps or is that possible?
Yeah, give me a sec here. I was.
So while he's getting the Google Apps up, in St. George, there is an intersection of Bluff Street and Sunset. And for years, it was a horrible T section. They have fixed it now. And what it's done is it has helped traffic really move smoothly from Bluff to Sunset. And also for those who are going north from Bluff up to the north part of the area. So it's a great intersection. I've driven by it many times and it flows really well. And I think it would work well here because my worry is we have this highway that's going to be a freeway pretty soon with bridges and intersections or interchanges, right? All of the truck traffic comes off 90th and it's gonna make a left turn to head towards New Bingham and all the warehouses out there. So we're gonna have a lot of trucks backing up on 90th. And so what I'm showing you here is this Bluff Street to Sunset. What they've done here is they've still kept that connection, kind of like our 90th to New Bingham. But then they've also made a straight through on Bluff Street, so people that are heading, in our case, they'd be heading west, can still keep going without stopping. What it does, however, is it does slow down traffic coming from our west 90th, where they have to stop there. I think what this does, my biggest worry is the truck traffic is not gonna stop. Amazon's out there, all the manufacturers are out there. All those big trucks are gonna stop to turn left. This will make it so that the traffic still flows. It will slow down 90th coming from our west side, but it will keep traffic flowing from 90th heading east towards the homes at night. Now, I don't know where we're at. I did send this to the mayor a few months ago. Obviously, it never got to you, and I don't know why. Obviously, I'm not a traffic engineer, and I don't know the rules of UDOT because they can do something somewhere else, but they can't do it here. This is gonna be forever, like this intersection. And if it's bad, we're gonna change it anyway. So this intersection was designed by UDOT, I believe. So someone's got the design somewhere, and I know there is a cost involved because it will cost more to create something like this. But in the long run, this is gonna make traffic flow better, and it's gonna make New Bingham not a danger.
So great idea. I love it when we have great ideas come in. So let's talk about this one for a minute. One of the reasons that you may realign an intersection like this is you want your heaviest movements to be the through movements. Where you start to run into problems is when your heaviest movements are left turns. Those create big issues, and that's where you start to see intersections like CFIs or interchanges or other kind of crazy or innovative ideas, right? This one, what happened here is traditionally Bluff Street was the road, right? You can see where that traditionally was.
Until growth came.
All the growth came, right? And so everybody wants to do this movement. And as much as you try to accommodate that many left turns, you can't. And so they realign this to make that movement. And then this becomes what I'll call the minor leg.
Right.
Well, what we have in our situation is 90th South is the major leg in the future.
Oh, I agree.
Right now it's not, right? So right now everyone uses New Bingham, right? And they're making that curve. But in the future, the east-west on 90th is the main flow. And so that's the one we want to be the through movement. Okay, and so rather than swinging everybody down to New Bingham, we want them to be the through.
But see, we've already got that problem on 78th. And like I said, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I've driven that road. 78th backs up to turn left. And if you're not watching, you're gonna slam into the back of somebody. There's no signal there yet, which I'm sure we're talking about. And also for those that are turning left, they can't turn left because all the traffic coming from the east. So I'm just trying to find a way to make it so that New Bingham, I feel like all of the 12 options cuts off New Bingham, cuts off all the truck traffic. And with the intersection being where it's at with the new Mountain View corridor, everyone's gonna be getting off there and heading up New Bingham.
So I understand your concern, and there's certainly a heavy movement that does that to New Bingham, right? No question. One of the things that you'll see is we do have a free right northbound, so they can come up and make a free right toward Mountain View. And then we have dual left turns so that they can turn on to New Bingham. However, again, as I mentioned, the higher volumes in the future are on 90th. So if we realign, or if we keep the alignment that it has now with New Bingham and then T and 90th, we have even more left turns to and from 90th that are gonna cause that to fail and not work right. And so that's why we're trying to preserve.
Both ways.
Yeah, we're trying to preserve that east-west movement. And I think everyone in this room is familiar. That's the thing that West Jordan struggles with the most is east-west movement, right? To get to I-15 to Mountain View and out to back, it's that east-west connection is so hard and so congested. And if you think about it, this 90th will be the only road in West Jordan that goes from U-111 to I-15. There's no other connection that does that in the entire city. And so to not preserve that is
that's a yes and a no, right? Because if you bend 90th into New Bingham Highway and you continue and you keep the state road designation as it is and take it out New Bingham Highway, then that's the road that goes from Bacchus to I-15, right? You're both right. I think what the difference is, what Chad is saying is he thinks the greater traffic flow is going to be the industrial traffic flow, not the residential traffic flow. So the industrial traffic flow going down to Amazon, going down to the warehouses, that truck traffic flow is gonna be, and what Chad is saying is that's gonna be greater than the residential traffic flow you've got coming from going straight west in the Ivory projects and these other, future growth out there. It's a question of who's right. They're both projections and they're both guesses. But I think the traffic will follow where you put the road. So it's not to say, well, because in every one of these scenarios, you've got the green line on 90th South goes straight through. None of them considered the bend that Chad is talking about and putting the bend in 90th instead of the bend in New Bingham. So it's like that wasn't even considered, but I think the traffic will follow where the road goes. So if you put it the way that Chad is saying, then that will influence where the traffic comes from. And there won't be as many left turns because they'll go down to New Bingham to start with, or whatever.
I think those are great points, and I agree that people will follow the way the road's designed, right? There's truth to that. But a big part of our analysis when we did the feasibility study was we did a lot of travel demand modeling. And so while I agree that these are all projections and we're looking to the future and it's hard to predict the future, we do have some very sophisticated tools that we use when we do this. And the travel demand model takes into account the new growth, the new homes, the new jobs, the existing travel patterns, and it models where people want to go and how people want to travel, and where that demand is. And that's what we're basing our recommendations on, is these sophisticated tools that show that there is a high demand on 90th South. There is also high demand on New Bingham, but we're showing higher on 90th, and that's why we're trying to preserve that.
And Wasatch Front Regional Council and the Regional Transportation Plan have all identified 90th as the heavy lifter.
Absolutely, and for the same reason.
We go back to the council, option 2. What would council's thoughts be if we bought these 3 homes, built the road, and then resell the homes?
And then what?
Resell the homes
I
again.
don't think what's being shared is what you're referring to.
Hang on, we're getting there.
Well, what if the residents refuse to sell? I don't know.
Well, we have to work through that, correct? But you buy these 3 homes possibly, build the road, and then the people buying the houses already know the road's there.
Could not use eminent domain to do that.
So you're saying buy the 3 homes, but not destroy them and not use them?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Build the road and then sell them once the road is built.
I don't know, can we even do that?
I was gonna say, if we bought the 3 homes, just tear them down. And then then it would be a whole lot cleaner. But I wouldn't, I'm, for this road, I'm not about to say take 3 houses.
I mean, I'd take 3 houses if it was necessary to get the alignment right. And to get it right, and we have to take a couple of houses to do that, I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with taking houses because the people that live there are gonna be mad, and then the people moving in will be less mad. That's not a valid use of eminent domain for me.
Nor I think you could.
So as far as
he was talking eminent domain, I think he's giving them the choice.
As far as the options go, then, from the council, what do you need from us today? I mean, obviously, there's 7 different opinions, and I don't think you really have a for sure opinion on which ones.
What option?
Well,
I
I
think
heard
there's the
4
most
being the
support for
most
4.
would support 4 is the question. I could support 4.
He'd be fighting the multiple votes.
I don't like any of them, so no good for me to do more
I
votes.
mean, honestly, I think concept of your idea would have like a flyover bridge, if money was just growing on trees. But it's not. When Kelly makes a point, it's not.
Would the bridge be open on time?
Well, that depends.
So you take the through street would be Bluff Street, and then a flyover bridge that would take over and then into Sunset. We'd like that on 78th. We'd like that down lower on 90th onto Old Bingham. I mean, there's 100 places where we could do that.
I just think that the truck traffic was part of when you guys did these options. I think it was just about traffic flow on 90th, and that's my disappointment.
Are we anticipating Amazon to continue to use Bingham, or New Bingham?
Oh, yeah, they will.
Or are we anticipating them going to 90th and
No, they'll go from Bingham.
they'll continue using?
And we understand the truck traffic's really high out here. We counted them. There's a lot. We designed it so that we have good turning radii for these large trucks to make these turns and get through here. I understand the concern.
My biggest concern is just the ones turning left, because that's a lot of truck traffic.
It is.
Those are big vans.
No, there's trucks.
I know, but yeah,
The vans bring them back, the trucks take it out.
90th, mostly those vans.
Yeah, you don't see them because the trucks get off Mountain View and take it to Amazon.
Oh, and go.
Yeah. So I'm talking about
Okay,
from Mountain View to Amazon, it's
Amazon,
trucks.
right.
Yeah, you're right, the
Okay.
vans are from.
The only real way to solve this is a bridge. We're just talking tens of millions.
We just built a bridge, we can do that.
Talk to Senator Fillmore.
So option 4,
That seems to be the consensus.
Are there any that prefer some other?
I don't love option 4, but I think it's the closest of the ones that are approved, like Kelvin said. I think my main priority is keeping Duck Ridge traffic minimized as far as regional or cut through traffic goes, keeping the traffic in front of those homes minimized. And then the other thing is, we didn't talk a lot about pedestrian safety going from the southern neighborhood to the northern neighborhood across 90th South, but I would really like to have a pedestrian bridge in the discussion, or a culvert under 90th or something to facilitate pedestrian connectivity so they don't have to cross at a ginormous.
I talked with the residents out there about a culvert going under the road, and they are not in favor of that because of safety reasons, like predator kind of reasons.
I agree on that.
They would prefer a bridge.
But remember, a bridge means taking someone's home out.
Bridge, yeah, well, unless you put,
Depends
unless
on
you
where
put
you put it. Yeah.
Depends on-
6400 West and on the west side of 6400 West, but now they're having to cross 6400 West to get to the bridge.
So let's talk about that later. Anything else you from us?
But,
we're gonna go 4 then.
well, I actually like a hybrid of 4 and 7, but
I do too.
but
Yeah.
4 of the ones that are there is probably the most acceptable.
The question is, though, we talked a little bit about having another public meeting or something about with these options, like on poster boards for the community to
Well-
come and all see.
If
I know we've had public meetings before, but I don't think we've had them with these like 10 options put in front of them, right?
No,
Not all these options, because many of them are unfeasible, and we didn't want to mislead them by showing them unfeasible options.
We could have a neighborhood meeting where we said, here were the 2 or 3 most viable, and this is the direction we went based on what we've heard. And be like somebody like, I think it was Kayleen or Kent said, we'd have an informational meeting and help keep them informed up front on where this is going and how it'll affect them. And, you know, if we buy that traffic simulation software, the Nestor that can do some great pictures for us, so could you guys do. That would show how using the 8,600 bridge counts and some of those other things that might be able to give the neighbors a better graphic on how we're gonna do that and what it would look like. So I wouldn't be opposed to holding another meeting. I don't think we do all 12, but we could do one and you could do 2 and 4, do 2 and 4 and 7, 2, and say this is the best that we could come up with. But it does help those neighbors on Duck Ridge so that they're not having cars backed up in their front yard trying to make left-hand turns onto 90th coming out of Duck Ridge, right? And so
I think this helps the houses on Duck Ridge. I think the ultimate goal, at least from all the meetings that I've been to with the neighbors, is how do we keep the traffic calm on Duck Ridge? That was the ultimate goal, is how do we minimize the impact on Duck Ridge?
I don't think this minimized the impact on Duck Ridge. I think opening that bridge did. Because this is not gonna minimize, I mean, it's minimized now, which is great. But once that turns into an intersection, those first 5, 6 homes are not gonna be happy.
It's already an intersection, right?
No, it's not.
No.
It's not open. It goes into 90th right now, right?
Yeah, it goes into 90th. So
Yeah,
it's
but
already-
there's no traffic.
But no traffic on 90th because it doesn't connect.
That's right.
So, would it be cheaper to buy those 3 houses than to do this option?
No, with this option, we don't need to buy those 3 houses.
Yeah, we would, with this one, we wouldn't need to buy it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if we did that option, your idea of buying those 3 houses, would that be less expensive than this?
But with this option, you don't buy the
No,
houses.
not with cost of.
I didn't think so. Want to ask the question.
Couple million.
$2 or $3 million right on top.
And those 3 houses still have the option of selling.
Sure. Go tell them that.
All right, so.
Yep.
We'll move forward with 4.
Okay.
Is that?
What do you think? We haven't heard which option you like.
No, I was in favor of 4 and 7 from the beginning, so that's where it kind of went, and that seemed to be the ones that made the most sense. Also, I'm interested to see how this could affect once we, get that rec center in there and how that's gonna affect in the Duckworth side of things as well. So big thing we need to really make sure is, again, I think this and 7 were the ones that took off that corner, which made it easier. I didn't see that much of a, you talk about it not being a straight thoroughfare. I couldn't tell, really looking at your map, that it skewed at all. So I don't know what the skew was. I like personally 7, where it took people mostly to away from the neighborhood. That was the thing I liked most about 7. That if 4 seems to be what most people have more.
I did like 7 for that reason as well.
I mean, that's the best thing. It's like
I could support 7 also.
you have to take a left turn just to say, I want to go into that neighborhood. But that also might be the turn that's going to take them to the rec center and so. So those are the things we have to kind of consider. But 4 and 7 were my favorites from the beginning. And it really affects, in a way, the at-large and Kent the most. So you 4 were going to be the ones going to be, kind of leaning towards the most.
And we're the ones that said yes.
Yeah, that's what I was like, well,
Yeah.
Bob doesn't need to talk. So why won't
Well, thank you. All right, thank you. We will close discussion topic number A and move to discussion B, the presentation of proposed form-based zoning. Corridor zone CZ. Railroad. Taylor, you're up.
Thank you guys.
Get it all queued up. We've heard the council this past weekend. We worked hard over the weekend, and no, I'm just kidding. Hopefully this aligns with what the council was talking about in part with form-based. And we're anxious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you.
This is much more interesting. than the last one.
You're looking for the fun one. Can you believe it?
Pretty pictures and everything.
I would take it personally if I were.
I do.
You know how to clear a room, Taylor.
I love it. It's super power.
Would you like to chair or?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so,
You got 5 minutes. Just kidding, go ahead.
so we originally started looking at this after, we had a meeting, probably about 7 or 8 months ago, where we had a couple of projects that were proposing to use the senior overlay zone to do some multifamily along Redwood Road.
And at that meeting, we heard from, I think, at least 6 of the 7 council members present that they wanted us to take a look at doing something to allow that same project to come back without the senior housing component and actually just be market rate. So that led us on a long process on looking at different concepts, and having met with different departments here in the city, we feel like we finally have something that we're ready to get feedback from council. So kind of moving into that. So what we can see here is the Redwood corridor. All of those units or parcels in blue are within 300 feet of Redwood Road. You see some of those in pink. Those wouldn't be under our current draft eligible for the Redwood Road, or sorry, the corridor zone, no, it's the corridor zone, as they're already included in the station area plan, and they have CC zoning on them already. So that's already in form-based code. So it's just looking at those blue parcels, and then to the right there, we can just see kind of the future land use plan map designation. So what we are requesting to do is twofold. First, we would add the corridor zone as an exception to the balanced housing chapter of the code. And then second, this would create a new form-based ordinance that can only be applied to Redwood Road. This would not be an overlay zone, so anyone that wanted to use it would actually have to rezone their property to this. Most likely, they would have to change the future land use designation as well to medium or high density residential, depending on what they wanted to do. Because of the nature of the zone, we'd also require a master development plan agreement with every rezone. It is a form-based code, but it's hybrid, as a pure form-based code just looks at the building and it doesn't look at the uses of the zone at all. This still does have a use table, so that's why we're considering it a hybrid. It's focused mainly on appearances, but we also do limit it in its scope to certain uses. As mentioned, this would only currently, as drafted, be available along Redwood Road. In the original draft, we had considered allowing this to also be used along 90th, 78th, and 70th, but we felt like that might have been a bridge too far. If it works on Redwood Road, maybe we can refine that and come back and add those to the corridor zone designation at some point in the future. As mentioned, this would be governed by an MDA. And rather than look at maximum densities, we wanted to look at floor area ratios.
What is a Florida area ratio?
Yeah, that's the next slide. So floor area ratio is essentially a way of calculating the size of a building. And we'll just do basic numbers. If you have a 10,000 square foot lot and your floor area ratio is 1, that means you have 10,000 square feet of building space. So if you're doing half of that as parking, then you need to do 2 stories for 5,000 square feet. So here we can see floor area ratio of 1. If you're covering the whole lot, whole lot's built. If you're only covering a quarter of the lot, you have to do a 4-story structure.
So if it's 1.5, because 1-to-1 is obvious.
Yeah.
But when it says 1.5.
Yeah, so if you're covering a full lot, you would have at least, so if you're doing a 50% coverage, you would have to have 3 stories.
Okay.
And the reason we want to do a FAR instead of dwelling units per acre is because we do anticipate this being mixed use. At some point, we would like there to be commercial components to these as well.
So here's my question, because it'll go into height as well, with the minimum height. If you do a FAR of 1.5, that means that the building on an acre's got to be 3 stories, right? What you just said.
Well, potentially.
Potentially.
Yeah.
So but it says minimum. If this is where I'm having probably the overall heartburn with this, besides some wording, but we'll get to that later. Is it says that the minimum height in this is 30 feet. What happens if somebody wants to build a building that's 1 floor and they want to have a rooftop patio as part of that building at that point? That building's only 15 feet and it doesn't meet the minimum height of 30. See where I'm going? if we're going to have the flexibility, I think we would need to have some flexibility to say, we can have one-story buildings on the front if they meet certain requirements, and they can have other things on the property. But a one-story building may be what works for them because they want to have a rooftop patio or do some other things. You see where I'm going?
Yeah, and we can definitely, if that's the way the council wants to go, we can change the code for that. Our thoughts and intentions were this is going to accommodate and kind of drive more high density development to Redwood Road. And we wanted to not only do 30 feet maximum height, but 2 stories minimum. Minimum height of 30 feet, 2 stories minimum, because the thought is we want to drive the density and create a streetscape along Redwood Road. And so the idea of the code as it's currently drafted is actually to not go to Woodstory Road. We want to create a street wall. We want to create a sense of place along Redwood Road. So increasing the height there.
But you can see where I'm going is that maybe you want to have a one-story building right at the front that goes back and then it goes up. Is that a one-story building or a 3-story building?
You measure buildings to the tallest point.
Okay.
So if you started at 1 story and went back, then we'd go to the back one. Now, our anticipation was actually that it'd probably be flipped. You'd have your taller building along Redwood, and then you'd decrease in height as you get towards the established single-family neighborhoods, which are behind it. But you could do it either way as long as you're getting that approved by council. Yes.
So you mentioned that it's to create a streetscape with some consistency. But when I went through the packet, there are so many different design ideas in there just from us that I don't see the consistency. I hear that word, but I don't see that in the diagram. So what is the goal?
I wasn't, sorry if I use consistency. Consistency is not necessarily the goal. Interesting. So something, different designs, something that is interesting for a pedestrian, but it's also interesting for somebody who's driving through the city.
So we don't care if it's a hodgepodge all along.
So that brings me to my question, how can we make sure that these new developments maintain that character and the harmony of existing neighborhoods?
Or how do we create that? Because
Yeah, or how do we create that?
I'm not in favor of this if we're just gonna, to me, it seems like another vehicle. We're just skirting the balanced housing to me. I don't think it doesn't seem to be the tool to get Redwood to be that commercial vibrant area if it's just whatever. So if I own these 2 acres and as long as I build 2-story building, doesn't really matter what I have in that building because they don't have to have commercial. Sure, we'd like that. And maybe at some point that will be the focus, but right now that is not what we're going to get. My experience says we're just going to get a lot of high density housing.
Yeah, that could be an outcome. And to go back to your comment about the balanced housing ordinance, the primary driver of that ordinance was to not necessarily limit high density. It's to gear it and steer it towards specific areas of the city, which I believe it has. Now, is there a limit? Yes. But those exceptions that we've added to the balanced housing ordinance over the years is primarily to focus the growth, the high density in specific areas. And that's the overarching question that we have to the council. Is the Redwood Road corridor appropriate for higher intensity uses?
So really the question is, do we want to focus Redwood Road as a high density?
I'm not sure if the word would be high density or higher intensity. There's a question there.
Well, I wish it could be high intensity, but I'm concerned.
Well, and
that it will just be high density.
See,
I don't see necessarily as a bad thing. I just want to make sure that it's creating part of our vision of our city and maintaining a specific look that kind of, whether it matches or whether it's what's the word I'm looking for, it gradually kind of like what we do with our housing, where we do the big houses, the little houses, that, you know, we have that balance. Thank you. Mixed use. But I want it to be I wanted to make sure like it's not hodgepodge, but that we actually use our vision that we want to create this. That makes sense.
And I'm not against the
Yeah.
density being there,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I want it so that when people drive into West Jordan, they have a sense that they're here, not
It's a community. Yes.
here's an old looking building, here's a very modern looking building, here's this other building. That we don't have any. It just doesn't create a sense of place if every developer comes in
I,
with a different look.
I understand that, and so there are requirements in here, maybe it's not in the PowerPoint, but in the design standards for the ordinance, there are things like,
Just when I looked at your graphics, I just thought we were creating a bunch of different looking communities. That
sure,
don't
if
really
it owns the
meld
graphics, we
together.
can change the graphics. We are looking for graphics of.
Like if I go to Boston, I know I'm in Boston because they're all red brick and they're all a certain look. If I go to San Francisco, I know I'm there.
Well,
I
if you go to
San
downtown
Francisco, I know.
Midvale, you know what the look is.
And yeah, and if I'm now going on Redwood in South Jordan, I'm seeing a similar kind of build. And I didn't get that
So-
from the packet, and that concerns.
Yeah, okay, that's valid, and we purposely use different types of elevations.
These are the examples of.
These are examples, they're all ones we took from Utah and the Wasatch Front. Now the standards that are in there, we have fenestration, so that's transparency on the first floor, second floor, third floor, upper floors. We have ground level details that are required. Entrances need to have certain architectural features, and so we have some frameworks, but I didn't want to come in here because we're going to do mid-century modern, or we're going to do Art Deco, or we're going to do Western mining town, because I don't know that I know or am the proper person to come up with that.
I guess we just want to make sure that we're not, like you said, hodgepodging, but actually contributing to West Jordan. Like it's West Jordan. We know we're coming into West
I
Jordan.
think the goal is no more Drake Lane type things where it's someone built a house or someone sells the house and then they build 6 houses from Redwood to the end. So what this is doing is it's trying to take it so that we're not building more Drake Lane type. Not that Drake Lane's bad, but it didn't turn out very good either.
Yeah.
That's what's gonna happen to the rest of Redwood Road if we don't do something like this.
And the other thing that we really tried to do is there was, sorry, Zach.
Sorry, Zach.
Zach, go ahead.
It's okay. I actually disagree. I think the hodgepodge or the variety is actually what creates the sense of space. The difference from one to the other to the next to the next. They don't. I don't think they need to be similar or identical or follow a theme or a motif. I think you create the blank canvas and you let the artists fill it in and you see what you get. And I think in a lot of situations that comes out well. In the packet on attachment B on line like 231, there's a great shot of Lehigh Main Street, I think is what it is. And it shows this like kind of row house style looking thing with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 different buildings that are attached, and they look great, and they're all different. And I think that's kind of cool. I don't think that's not necessarily wrong to say that it's going to be different. I think if it's all different, it makes it more interesting than if it's all the same.
Council would have your eyes on each of these developments as they come in.
Yeah, that is the other point, is they are all master development plan and agreement, so it is negotiation with the council. I did want to circle back as well as there's talk of how this integrates with the rest of those neighborhoods around there. And it might not, but part of the thought was we have growth encroaching on our neighborhoods. And so this is to set an edge essentially. That's kind of why we're setting the street wall as well. This is the edge. Focus the development here, and then those neighborhoods behind don't have the development pressure, so you don't have the creeping change of character to those neighborhoods.
And that's what my concern was.
And I agree with that, but what I'm having a difficulty envisioning going from 94 south to 68 south with this is, and some of it works, you know, if this were to be put in at the corner of 70th South and Redwood on the northwest corner, I'd say go for it. I don't care, right? Because there's enough buffer between them and the meat farms and everything else that we're probably okay. What I'm concerned about more would be farther on the south end, particularly, I'm gonna use a particular neighborhood because this happened yesterday, is that I'd be concerned about putting a bunch of higher density housing right near the 8200 South area. Because what people would end up doing is they would be using 8200 South as the cut through to get to 13th West. And that happened yesterday. And just to put this in perspective, yesterday, when the PD had to respond to that fatal car wreck and they shut down 13th, they shut 78 South between Redwood and 13th West. I'm trying to get to Jim's restaurant yesterday to meet with Adam Gardner and didn't know 78th was shut down. So I go farther south and I go down to Fox, whatever it is, Fox Point, or Fox or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I wander around and you can't believe the number of cars that were coming off of Redwood Road going to 13th West to bypass 7800 South. So if we're going to do this, we've got to figure out, and it's a way to keep the traffic onto Redwood Road and not going, particularly on the south end, 7800 South to 90th. And even on 70th South, there's a lot of the residential stuff right there, Bora Bora and Leland and those kind of streets that we don't want the traffic from this to go east to try to get to, right now, they won't go anywhere north on 13th West, but they can go south. We'll let them have fun with that. But
Kevin, can I interject?
yeah, go ahead.
I feel like what you're saying, I don't really agree because that was an emergency situation. And I don't think that the neighborhoods are being overwhelmed in non-emergency situations. But it's good to have that connection when there is an emergency.
But if we put, right now, the number of ERUs along Redwood Road is what? 10? You pick a section of Redwood Road. And if we're talking about 300 feet deep, you're talking 2 or 3 lots. And, if you're talking 2 acres and you're talking 20 or 30 units to the acre, all of a sudden, instead of a couple of houses, now you've got 60 houses. And all those houses don't want to go to Redwood Road. Where do those 60 houses go? So we're automatically building in some traffic that might go east. And we've got to take that into consideration. Or it might, because most of the traffic on the west side of Redwood Road isn't going to go west because you got canals and other kind of things that dead end it. But on the east, you've got some through streets like Fox Point. You've got Bora Bora. You've got Leland that goes to you can cut around through into my neighborhood.
Tell people.
Yeah. Well, they all know. That's come on. They all cut through there.
Bora is closed off, people.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? And so I think, and on the east side, so like on the east side or on the west side of Redwood down 7300 South where the DI is, executive lane dead ends. You're not gonna be able to cut through. On the east side, you can. And so that's my concern is in this kind of a situation when we're talking about the entire road, we need to figure out how to mitigate the traffic so that the existing neighborhoods don't get inundated with, an extra couple of hundred cars because we built a higher density project on Redwood Road.
Anywhere we increase density, we're impacting roads around.
But are we making them go through a resident, but
I thought this was more, not housing, I thought this was more about making Redwood so that we could turn these into business.
Well, like Councilman
Maybe I confused
White
because
was saying.
when I heard it, it wasn't about putting in apartments. It was more about putting in, instead of all these homes turning into 50 homes, turning it into a zone where we can turn them into businesses on the street.
but every one of the designs we see are residential with maybe some business on the bottom floor.
And right now, there's more demand for residential than for commercial, and this zone allows for both.
It does allow for both.
So
This is-
residential is gonna be pushed.
This is a tool.
And
right?
the ones that are wanting something different are residential that they're wanting, aren't they? Both of the.
So the one that we talked to, they originally came to us wanting to do mixed use, and then with the senior housing overlay, said no, it's senior housing. So I think with the option to do mixed use, they would probably take that. They had a business in that parcel already. And so to incorporate that, but also to add some residential units.
Is that the one down near 90th?
Daycare, isn't it?
Gardner Lane.
Yeah, because I know there was that daycare that wanted to do.
Yeah.
That was a few months ago.
Yeah, and so I think the intent is for it to be all of the above. I think in the short term, honestly, it's probably going to be mostly for residential.
Yeah.
But it's one tool and
Not to
all the
make fun
traffic,
of
the
that.
specific situations. We'll have to measure those on an individual basis. This is a huge corridor.
Yeah.
And this is a tool that may not fit in every situation, but it's an option for the development community, it's an option for the council to consider, because as it stands right now, Redwood does not show well. We've got a lot of narrow, deep lots, old agricultural property, code enforcement nightmares. Don't get me started on that. There is so much junk on those deep, narrow lots. We need a catalyst to give development, the development community at least another option, another tool to.
Let me ask you this then, if we're talking about the deep, narrow lots. What I don't want to do is have this 75-foot front and some long project that goes back. Is there a minimum project width standard that we would accept to help solve that problem? Because if we don't have that, then all we're gonna do is we're gonna get those little, like the Semnani project or the Drake Lane project. We're gonna get these little narrow projects that go back. We need stuff that stretches, that are more consistent, that stretches. And so I think we need to talk about maybe a minimum frontage of a development too. Because otherwise, if we're talking about just a little narrow piece of property, we're gonna get stuck with the same thing. So,
Which is basically what they explained.
We do say percentage wise, minimum frontage has to be built out to 75%, but there is the exception if there were a flag lot style development. Now, if we want to remove that flag lot style development, which I think would lend itself towards what you were just talking about, that's an easy change to make.
If I can just point out real quick, when the council redid the general plan, they talked pretty extensively about Redwood Road, about bundling property and getting rid of some of the ingresses and egresses, specifically to stop the single lot from adding, the deep single lot from adding 6 homes and then moving on. So I think what he's saying is this can address it, but maybe there's some more tweaking.
because I just don't want to deal with one lot and they come in with 100-foot front and try to do stuff long and narrow because we're stuck with the same thing.
It seems like the cities on either side of us have figured it out.
What's that?
The cities on either side of us have figured it out.
Well, I mean, you drive down Redwood Road, South Jordan's got the same issues. I mean, I don't know where this perception is that their Redwood Road is perfect, but they've got the same issues with, there's a house right here, and there's a post office here, and there's buildings back here. And so Riverton and South Jordan do not have it figured out.
Much closer.
I would support that you have to have a certain frontage so that we avoid the Drake Lane. I do have
Can we
a
ask for-
question.
Sorry, can we,
Yeah.
before we move on, is there enough majority of the council to have a minimum frontage along Redwood? Okay.
And are we talking like, what's that?
100 yards.
Linear feet.
100 yards?
600 feet.
We'll look, we'll look at inserting a number.
What's gonna make most sense?
Yeah.
We'll work on that.
Why
Thank
in
you.
there it says, we're not gonna allow fast food, but would allow food trucks. I just was curious why.
See, limiting
And then I
drive-throughs.
want you to know, I appreciate the
So
green
drive-throughs
space that was
allow
put in
for
there.
ADA accessibility, so limiting drive-throughs is a concern of mine.
So part of the reason for that is we're trying to limit and remove connections on.
But we're also limiting people accessibility. That's my concern. Or moms with young kids, or, you know.
So, and I guess to that point, we're not proposing that we rezone the whole corridor. They'd have to come in for each every individual one. So there are many properties along Redwood Road right now, which currently allow for drive-throughs. And so if you wanted to do a fast food restaurant with a drive-through, you want to use this.
But hypothetical, so let's just hypothetical. Because it's going in on the corner, because I saw it the other day. There's a Jimmy John's going in at 90th and Reading, right?
In there?
Jersey. There's a Jimmy John's with that, there's a Jimmy John's and then Jersey Mart going in. On the top of another corner. And so, yeah, so, you know, fast food alley.
It's next to the Asian market.
None of those have drive-throughs, but they're considered fast food restaurants. So I think that when we say drive-through / fast food, we're creating, my personal opinion is we're creating an issue because Jimmy John's, Jersey Mike's, they're all fast foods. Wayback Burgers, it's a fast food, but they don't have drive-throughs.
Kelvin, let me interrupt you. I think it's a moot point because you've already got tons of commercial. It's already zoned commercial.
But what
They don't have to use this tool.
What I'm saying is let's say they want to build one of these units and it says no, and right in the table right now, it says no fast food. That means you can't put a Mobetta's, you can't put a Wayback, you can't put a Subway. No, it has to say, it might need to say no drive-through. It might need to say if you're gonna have you may have to have a pickup area for the ADA where you can pull off. But what I don't want it to say is no fast food, because is Chipotle a fast food restaurant or isn't? Is Barbacoa a fast food restaurant or not? Is Cafe Rio?
Nope.
You know, well, then what's a fast food? So you see where I'm going with the definition, Scott.
Good point. I'm sorry.
A couple other things that I saw. Can I tell you? I don't want to sound mean, but so it'll probably come across this way. But and if I apologize, but this is way too long. We know from when we have the plan community, and like in the intent of this, it's got the intent that goes from A through J about the intent. We all know that none of that matters because you can't hold a developer to anything with the intent. So why have it? See where I'm going with that? Because we've been down that road with PC.
It's like reading the abstract on a scientific paper. It gives them an idea of whether it's a tool they can use or not.
Well,
But there are other ways to communicate that, and we can put that in staff reports. We can, as we meet.
I think they were just putting enough information in there, just so enough was in there, and then we can go and take out what needs to be taken out.
Don't move anything regulatory into the body of the ordinance.
Yeah.
and I just, here's my personal opinion. 15 pages is too long. And while I appreciate a couple of things where they're going, that the point system and the complicated with the point system and open space versus points, and can you buy it up and do all that other stuff? That seems too complicated because it's going to put us in. And honestly, what the developer's going to come in and say is, well, we want to build the highest density possible. We don't care. And we'll pay for a park someplace else. And you guys figure it out. Unless we have a way to do transfer rights where we say, hey, they're paying, let's just hypothetically say somebody coming in, they want to build a unit, they want to pay $500,000 for the open space, then we ought to have a mechanism particularly since it's a long Redwood Road, right? Because there's not, besides Veterans Park, not a lot of open space along Redwood Road, but we do have along the river, we do have some agricultural space there. Is this the opportunity to just say, you want to build the density along the Redwood Road, you have to just give us the money for transfer rights for something in the Redwood Road corridor, like the Jordan River or like the agricultural, and not worry about them doing the open space and points. It's just it's a transfer right, and we explore that. That's my question.
Yes, and so that's exactly what the fee and lieu intended to do. We use this in Eagle Mountain, we talking about that. But the idea is, the more units they build, the more they should have to pay towards park space. We don't want park space along Redwood Road. So as doing it as a fee and lieu rather than an impact fee, we're able to then spend that money on regional parks. So we could put that in Vets Park, we could put that in Wills Park, we could put that down at
But
the
see,
river.
I don't want the money on Redwood Road to go to the Wheels Park.
Well, and it's gonna go
Stay in the Redwood Road corridor area.
Right.
The city council will determine where that money goes and what we use it for. The other thing that we do like giving them some ability with amenities is if they come in and say, I want to do street frontage cafes, and I want to make lots of improvements to the frontage of Redwood Road in front of our development. We want to make it wider. We want to put in more trees. We want to put in street furniture. We want to put in upgraded stuff. We want them to be able to get amenities points for that, so that deducts a small portion of their fee in lieu.
But see, why don't we just say they want to put amenities in? And it's up to the council to decide how much to waive of the fees.
We wouldn't be waiving impact fees.
No, I'm just saying, how much the council will decide what those amenities, because look, we all both know, and in the table, garbage cans is an amenity. We don't need garbage cans as an amenity, unless we're talking about some very nice ones right along Redwood Road. So you see where I'm going is, instead of the points and creating this point thing and, okay, you got so many points that it should just be, they say, look, based on this amenities, it's going to cost this much. We want this much of a reduction towards the fee and the lieu in lieu of fees for open space.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. And so I have a to-do list here that I wrote down on stuff that I need to do if this were to go forward. And one of those is to create an approved amenity book, which would say, like, if you're going to do amenities, these are amenities the council have already approved. If you put this in, council already approved that this is an appropriate model number, it's worth this many amenities. And then also having that amenity point be classified at whatever value the council wants to give it and the fee schedule. And so rather than say amenity points are blah, 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 if they bring in public art and the city council says, we feel like that's worth a reduction of $5,000, say that's worth $5 million, how many points it is. That's just a way to track it. And so that we know the more development that they do, the more units they use, the more amenities they have to require. We want to tie their amenity requirement to how dense the project is. So the more dense it is,
Well, we saw how complicated on the west side the density buyout became.
Yes, this would not be a buyout. It would just be.
It was the same type of concept, and we ran into that.
Emily, did you have something?
Yeah, well, that was part of my question. Should the fee and lieu funds be restricted to enhance the amenities within CZ, which then would create issues with accessibility, or are we going to spread it out citywide? That was one of my questions, which you brought up. But another question that I had is there, and if I missed it, what about introducing affordable housing requirements or incentives within the CZ? So how can the CZ ordinance balance economic growth with affordability and inclusivity? That's important to make sure that we are creating affordable housing if we're going to be going down this route.
Not affordable housing, moderate income housing, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I know. But I want to make sure that that's part of this discussion that we are incentivizing these developers to not price people out.
And so that is something I feel like this is well suited to do. Gentrification. I was hoping for some feedback from the council from what type of
I guess my concern
affordable
is,
or moderate income housing provisions you'd be supportive of.
but that's my concern is the increased property values from this high density development is going to affect affordability and displacement, and cause displacement risks, and that's the concern.
Well, I don't know anybody that's building cheap apartments.
But we're not gonna build another Novi. But I'm just saying,
Well, even.
I just
Novi's
wanna
not
make
cheap.
sure this is part of the.
Well, they're built cheap, but it's not cheap.
There are, and maybe there should be some ratios that for every, I mean, right along Redwood Road right now, there are some affordable housing, right? There are some older houses that probably aren't costing a lot of money to rent out. We need to look at those, that if we're displacing those, then we need to say for every one of those, you're gonna replace it with 4 or 5 or something units that are reasonably affordable that meet that moderate income housing goal.
And that's what they're doing
Maybe
in
the
Salt Lake
20 and
City.
80, yeah, that's
They've
Salt
got-
Lake's doing.
Salt Lake City has got high rises that have affordable units along with penthouses that are
Yeah.
multi-million.
You just approved an amendment to your city center core zoning district that had a minimum, what, 10% affordable housing?
I think
We could easily wrap that in.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure that's part of the
I
discussion.
have you looked at Salt Lake's?
Have I really liked some of the stuff
I
they're doing?
liked the,
Yeah, that's the thing, and we don't have that affordable.
So we've been on this for 45 minutes. What is the next steps that we need on this? Because I don't think we're gonna make any decisions the next 15 minutes. What are you guys looking from us? What are the next steps?
I think we've done a lot of it, but what poison pills are in here that we need to remove? What is anything that has not been thought of that we need to add to this so that when it does come back, it's.
Can I give you just some technical stuff? There's way too many shalls. Shall is, if you read the Bible on
I like shall.
guidelines drafting and guidelines for drafting and editing legislation, shall is only used in very specific places that you will do this, and there's other ways of doing it. Particularly, there's a couple of sections that say, where possible, you shall do this. Well, that's ambiguous, and we shouldn't be doing it. It's either you do it or you don't. Or it's an exception or it's not. And so I would just say, pull out drafting guides. Alan's got one, Brian Gardner's got one, and I think we can clean this up, and you don't have to have 15 pages. We could probably eliminate 3 or 4 pages in extraneous words.
Well, I do know if we pull up the images and the tables, it's down like fine.
Is there anyone, I know you were not wanting fast food listed, you were not wanting fast food listed, I don't want fast food listed. Is there one more
I
that
think we can
doesn't?
cut that out, and as developers come to us, I think it could be especially if there's out there
And just look down that list. Is it easier to simplify that list? The zoning administrator's got a lot of authority in this to say what a light use is. Do we need, massage therapy in there, for example, can it be, or what's a similar use to that? And we just create some general categories for this. You see where I'm going with that?
Okay.
Yeah, I had one question on how can we incorporate TIF into this for building up more parking garages? Is this something that maybe I haven't got into that very deep, and
It wouldn't prohibit, but those are tools, separate tools.
is that a separate tool that's
Yeah,
separate from
that's-
the?
Remember,
Yeah, that's gonna be 50 units per acre and I think 10% moderate income.
Most people don't want to build parking garages because they cost.
Exactly, that's what I'm talking about, TIF. You can use a TIF to offset the cost of a parking garage.
Not in these small areas. I don't think you can use these small areas.
Well, it can be an RDA that covers a large area.
True, and we have those tools that can be used right now, wouldn't prohibit that.
But you probably get, there's a lot of people using in the back parts, the underground, the first level would be the parking and the people.
Yeah, the podium
Yeah,
style.
I think that's how most people would handle it.
So you're looking to bring this back to the council for a vote? We have to go to the planning commission, I know that, but what more do you need from us to make the changes before it comes back to
Can
us?
I squeeze into this one? Sorry, guys, but been a lot of talk and I haven't been able to wedge my way into this one. I think this actually needs to be, it's like the city center zone stretched out to me. It's saying we have a designated area of the city, we have a designated vision for it, and this is how you comply with that, and this is what we want you to bring to us, Mr. Developer. I don't think it has any teeth if it's just an option. I think we rezone the whole corridor and you do the whole thing. Somebody said that's not what we're proposing, but that's what I think it needs to be if it's gonna have any teeth. Otherwise, like has been brought up, if you wanna put a fast food restaurant in, just don't rezone it to this. Rezone it to something else, or just use whatever's already there, or whatever. You've got no teeth to it at all if you're not just gonna blanketly apply this. I think it's a whole lot of consternation over nothing if you're not gonna just put it in. I don't think it's too long. I think most of it's pictures, or at least, a third of it is pictures, which I think are helpful and good. So I think you're only at, 9 or 10 pages of code. And I think when you're defining a zone, that's a good thing. Form-based zoning is, I think, the way that the council has decided we wanted to go just in general, because we want to evaluate development proposals on their merits as they come to us, not necessarily based on what some previous council or whatever thought should be in a code. So let's take this form-based zoning and let's run with it, and let's see what kind of proposals we get. Every one of these is gonna need an MDA and an MDP, so we've gotta look at every detail and street light and fence type and whatever as they come in, because that's gonna be in those MDAs. So I don't think there's anything wrong with this. I love where it's gone. I just think it needs to be blanketly applied. I think it's good. And I would really appreciate if we could get through more than one or two of the slides before we just dig into everything and not come to conclusions before we've gotten the presentation here. That's just a side note. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
Stay the work on that.
You're not an interruption. Thank you. I happen to agree. Got a point.
Who would like to go ahead and make it actual zone and rezone those properties? Yeah.
You have 5.
Can I suggest a reason why you might not want to zone those properties? If you feel like the city has to take a role in assembling properties, you may want to not blanket rezone Redwood Road, but assemble properties where you think this would apply. Once you've assembled the properties, then rezone it to this. If you blanket rezone in advance, you've affected the values before you acquire the properties.
Not necessarily. This is being proactive, where we've always been a reactive city, and this in a way is being proactive and what we want to see happen.
First step would be to plan its future plans.
I think what you're saying is we don't want to spend more money than we have to, right?
If the city is ever going to play a role in assembling properties along Redwood Road to try to affect this redevelopment. You mentioned TIF, use of TIF.
Yeah.
That's the government taking an active role in trying to push development in a way we want to push it more than just setting the zone. And so it just kind of depends on what role you want to do. I'm just trying to give you the other perspective.
So to
That's all.
Problem changing the future land use map to.
And that gives you all the come in and say, no, we're not.
See, if I were going to take the step, I would think that the step that we would want to take first is change the future land use map to say that's what we want. And then we can't get the other zone, because then they would have to come in and ask for a rezone for some other for something else. And so then they can specifically apply this zone when they go in, because the future land use map already approves it. And then that rezone should be simpler. So that's where I would lean, would be with the future land, instead of blanket zoning the land right now, I would lean towards a future land use map saying
Like a
those
corridor
properties,
zone,
that
future land
corridor
use.
is, that's where I'd lean.
Yeah, there's increments, there's baby steps. That would be the first step, future land use map. There's also the IOZ example where we've actually, if you look in our zoning ordinance, we've already telegraphed the intention of areas that we have carved out. This will be an IOZ zone. It's not zoned IOZ until the developer comes and brings an MDA and MDP to council and that's approved. And so that's kind of a half step further than just changing the general.
That was kind of, remember, council.
Yeah. So we're happy to look at any of those options. So
I get what you're saying, Corbin, with affecting the property values before you jump in and purchase, but I kind of agree with Pamela that I think it's better to put it out there as forcefully as we can to put the message out there. This is Redwood Road. This is our downtown, extended, whatever you want to say. And this is what it's gonna be. And we're gonna put it out there. And if we can facilitate it, we gotta play in the sandbox that we built. And that may not be quite as cost effective, but I think it will minimize the city's what's the word I'm looking for? I cannot think. Minimize the necessity of the city's involvement in that you're already putting it out there so that the development that comes up will already fit the thing and you won't need the city to assemble the parcels. Does that make sense?
What do you think about that, Parker?
Right, yeah, certainly a possibility, right? I think Zach's point is very well taken. If you rezone it, you possibly encourage the private sector to assemble the parcels. So the city doesn't have to assist with trying to nudge the development direction you want. It's hard to read the tea leaves, but Zach's point is very well taken.
if we go down that road, we would carve out the existing commercial. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, not include, because if you look at this map right now, it includes a lot of the existing SC2 and so forth. So we would modify this.
Commercial leave Redwood Road. And there's nothing wrong with even some of these businesses that can have some residential on top.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's an absolute option.
They're putting apartments on top of Costco now, so
Exactly. So I want to make sure that that's a very viable option as developers come in and look at this. But I think we need to be a more proactive city, and this is a great start to that.
I'll take a Costco with apartments on top on Redwood Road.
Yes.
Trader Joe's.
Steakhouse. I guess the last point is we did talk about the fee in lieu. I know the consensus or what we heard is it's maybe too complicated, but is that idea if we can make it simpler, something the council is interested in or no?
It's not that it's too complicated. I just fear there's fallout and some negatives that we can't quite process right now. And I want to make sure we're not cornering ourselves with something that is going to negatively affect what we want to achieve. So I'm still torn about that one.
I'm good with it going to transfer rates. And maybe we need to have another session when we talk about transfer rights and higher density here offsetting lower density someplace else.
Sending and receiving zones can get very complicated.
They can, but I think with this area, particularly along Redwood Road, you're talking about the river.
I would love to, narrow the scope. It needs to have a nexus and a connectivity. You're impacting the the use of parks in this side of the city. Therefore, it would make sense to make sure that those monies collected stay here for those residents.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. Like, it may fund citywide improvements, but it's gonna dilute the direct benefits for the CZ area. That's my concern.
Anything else you need from us?
We'll get working. Thank you for.
Thank you for your time and info. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for that work on it. That was like it.
All right, we've got a 6:30 cutoff. I don't think we'll have time to finish all. No. We have 3 more. Oh, wow. So let's get through the discussion of council members on external boards. You want to bring that up, Alan? And then if we have time,
Yeah.
just might move the council compensation to the next meeting.
So I think we could do this fairly quick.
So before we start, I Kent asked me the question and he goes, how does this work? You know, it's the second year he's been here. So my thoughts are, if you want to stay on, great, but if you want to be on a board you haven't been on, we can out there. Like for instance, I'm on Chamber West. I've only been on there a year. I feel like I barely got all my ducks in a row there and want to do another year. But is there someone else who wants to be on it as well?
But that occurred last year too, when I wanted to stay in some of my positions. I had only been there a year and I got off because we had new people, so. So I can't totally support that.
Well, I didn't say that's what we were doing. I was just mentioning that. So.
I know, but I'm just saying that there's another side to that.
Okay, so what we can do is start at the top. LPC, the mayor is on the executive committee, and so the council has a voting position on LPC. And they meet the second Mondays at noon when the legislature's not in session. And they meet weekly during the session. And this one is a set, or no, I'm sorry, we have 2. We have two council members. They're voting, they cannot be switched. So if council member Shelton can't go and someone else goes, council member Shelton has the vote. He can't move the vote. So this is kind of a set thing. Right now we have council member Shelton and council member Jacob that are on LPC. And LPC is with the Utah League of Cities and Towns.
So I'll speak quickly. I've enjoyed working on LPC, but if somebody has a strong interest in doing that, I'm willing to step back from that and let them jump in. But if there's no real interest, I'll continue.
I want to, but I think I have a conflict with Monday meetings.
During the session, it's pretty intense. You're there every week.
No, it's in the Capitol building. It's not intense. Come on.
Sorry. It's in Marble Halls, but it's intense.
I had to give you a hard time.
It's my number one committee I want to do, but I have too many conflicts during that time.
It's pretty cool.
I know.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets heated, not just.
So
Sometimes
is there, so I guess I'm gonna ask, does Councilmember Shelton and Jacob still prefer that, or Councilmember Whitelock is interested? I don't know about.
I'm happy to stay on, but if there's anyone who's interested, I'm happy to step back.
I can't do that. I can't do Mondays.
It fits well with me because I'm gonna be at the Capitol pretty much the whole session anyway, so.
You can't do second Mondays anyway, because second Mondays at 2 is the mosquito board.
What about second breakfast?
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like keeping it Councilmember Shelton and Jacob for 2025. Okay. Is that?
I'm good with that.
Fine, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Council of Governments, they meet quarterly, January, May, August, and November, typically the third Thursday during lunchtime. This week. And that's the mayor and a council member in first class cities, which we are currently, that's Council Member Bador and Mayor Burton. So I don't know.
That is one I've not been very good about, just because I tried to get some kind of thing. I just have not been good about that one with my work. I can
Council member would want to do
I
that.
can work be better unless if someone wants it, they can have it. I'll try to work better at it.
Out.
It's Thursdays.
Council of
I
Government
could
is
do
with
Thursday.
all the cities.
I know. It is.
Yeah, I'd be out
No,
of the country
council
for
of government is with all the mayors.
Oh, that's right, that's right. I'm thinking of.
AMC is all-
We really do.
nothing.
Yeah.
Which would you, council of mayors, council of government?
council of government.
COG.
Council of governments, they appoint positions for like, doing more stage region council and other positions like that.
It's very tied to WFRC. And approving budgets and those kind of things for WFRC.
They get assignments from the state.
I was asked by someone in the chamber to be on that. So that would be my preferred, but Councilmember Lamb wants to stay. I'm sure Councilmember Green does, so.
No, you can take the alternate.
So are
I'm
we,
okay.
Wait, I thought we still had COG.
Hold on,
I know,
okay.
but I wouldn't want to do two on Thursday
okay,
because.
Well, if you want
they kind of
chamber, I'm fine with that.
conflict.
so COG,
No, it sounds like I'll do cog and she'll do chamber.
okay, so,
I didn't know you wanted to do that one.
okay, so Councilmember
Down
Lamb
at my
for
chamber
Council of
member.
Government and the chamber will be Councilmember Whitelock. And this one I've got to remember, you're the Board of Governors. Which one are you? Board of
It's
Directors?
on both.
You're on both. So it'd be both Board of Governors and Board of Directors, Mayor. Okay, so
Do they both?
one does and the other one doesn't, I believe.
One, the board of directors is the council, the board of governors is the mayor and council.
Yes.
And the mayor does not go to board of directors.
Something like that, yeah.
Are they both held at the hospitals?
It depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
So Whitelock and Green.
If somebody else wants the alternate, I'm okay with that.
I
Because
would be
the
interested, in-
primary person does most of the stuff.
I would be interested in being an alternate on the short chamber list.
I'll take it. I don't care.
Okay, Whitelock, Shelton. Okay, the Association of Municipal Councils, this one is typically the second Tuesday at noon, which is the same day we do council meeting, but it's at noon, not 4. They choose the chair in January and they meet at the chair's city location. So when Councilmember Green was on it and he became the chair, they met at West Jordan City Hall. I don't know who the chair is. They haven't voted yet, have they?
We did not have a meeting in January, so
Okay.
we will have a meeting in February.
Okay, so is there an interest on the Association of Municipal Councils?
I'm fine staying on it unless somebody else wants to. I've been on it for 2 years
I'll
now.
continue to do it. I don't care.
So if someone else.
Leave both of you.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say the same for AMC. Okay, the internal committees, we have the West Jordan Youth Council. That one currently is Councilmember Green, Councilmember Bedore. They meet once a month during the school year and they have some service projects. They're going to be at the local officials day up at the legislature in 10 days or so, 8 days. So we can have up to 3 on that. Is
I'd like
there-
to be on that one.
Okay,
Somebody else wants to. I'll stay.
I'm saying. I'll stay, but can move if someone else wants it.
okay, so Bloom, Green, Bedore, unless somebody else wants to do it, they meet like 4 o'clock after school
On Tuesdays,
on
yeah.
Tuesday.
Second.
Wait, on Tuesdays during our
No,
city
that,
council?
it will change.
It will change because.
Yeah.
We're just gonna.
Gotta pick you or the city. Yeah, it has been the second Tuesday of every month. It will change with our schedule.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got council members Bloom, Green and Bedore on youth council. The other ones, last year, you didn't choose to have those committees, even though they are defined in council rules. That's utility and enterprise, land use, general plan, mayoral appointments, council rules. The only one that is required by law is the budget and audit committee. We will be having a meeting shortly as soon as we get the audit letter back, which I think the STEC is expecting around the end of January from the auditors. That's the only one that's required, so
Twice.
I want to start with the budget audit since there are three of you that would like to continue with the budget audit. There's about
Is there anybody else that wants to be on it?
3 or 4
Yeah,
meetings.
anybody else want to be on it?
I'll do it, but
I
I don't.
enjoyed
I
it
think
for the first
Councilmember
two.
Whitelock should be on it.
Okay, so does that mean you're off?
Yeah.
Okay, so Shelton's off, Whitelock's added.
I think she'd do a better job than me.
Councilmember Lamb and Green, do you want to stay on it or is there any others?
I really enjoyed it the first 2 years.
Like I said, there was only 2 meetings. It wasn't.
Yeah, no, it wasn't bad. I really enjoyed it. I'm good. I'll stay off of it.
Lamb Green.
Okay, Lamb, Green, Whitelock. Okay, is there interest
Ready to
for?
change up the chair though? I mean, didn't do much. I just started the meeting.
Now we could have Chair Whitelock, we can have Councilmember Whitelock chair it or.
What a chair, what, Keely?
I don't care.
Put her as the chair, put me as the member.
Okay, leave Kelvin as vice. Okay, I'm just gonna go up. Council rules, this is a group that meets occasionally when we want to discuss changes to council policies and procedures. Last year, council had talked about just doing it in a committee of the whole. With the 7 of you.
Yeah, I think that's what we should do.
Okay, so I won't do that one. Mayoral appointments, you've changed Title II, but you still have advice and consent for statutory positions like the Planning Commission as well as department heads. When those are to come forward, you've changed like Board of Adjustments and some of the others.
But also one that we talked about, just bringing a community of the whole.
Well, we haven't talked about how we want to do advice and consent. We need to talk about what meaningful advice and consent is and how we want to do it. Whether it's through this or something else.
The general plan, so nothing on mayor or.
I was just going to general plan. We've got to start general plan again. Because we were gonna update parts of the general plan once a year for the next 5 years. And we're already a year behind now. So we've got to have this one where we can bring residents in and figure out what section of the general plan we're gonna. So yeah, general plan's one we've got to have this year.
Okay, is there 3 of you that would like to be on the general plan committee?
Do it. Anybody here?
Zach, do you want to be on that one? I was like, just talk to the ceiling.
No, that's okay.
You can put me on general plan.
Or one more?
What is the committee going to do?
We've got, I have to go back and look at the minutes. I haven't gone back to look at the conclusion of the general plan and what the outcomes were. But it is that, I don't know if it was annual, I think it was every couple of years that
But
we
we
would
were
need
gonna
to
do, we were
certain
gonna take,
sections.
there were like 10 chapters. And we were gonna take 2 chapters a year and update it so that the general plan's on a rotating update instead of doing the massive wait 10 years and update it and have it be completely screwed up.
I'll be a member.
Okay, so.
Just doesn't seem to me like the council does that much on it. Cassidy did a lot, staff did a lot.
Yeah.
But, so I'm not sure what the committee is
I
gonna
think they
do.
just want somebody to. Oh, you're right. It's really not a committee. It's just attending the general plan meeting.
Right, the general plan is run by residents.
It's really not a chair by chair thing. It's just you're attending the meeting.
There to support.
So I mean, we could just put me and Kelvin on there and leave it at that.
Helen wanted to do it, so
Oh, yeah, okay.
We're okay. I'll leave Pamela on. Next one is land use.
That's also one that we brought to the committee of the whole, because before the three of us were doing it, and then the other 4 were like, what? So we don't need that committee because we'll just do land use here.
although I think we were providing some valuable feedback to developers.
I think we were, but the bigger thing I heard was the other 4 that weren't on it.
Well, given the way things are working these days, there's no reason why we couldn't have the 3, and if anybody else wanted to join them.
Well, the reason it was 3 is because you have 4, you have a public meeting.
By definition, it's not a public meeting anymore, so.
Well, and the other flip side of that is it became seen as a necessary step in the process rather than a way for a developer to get quick and easy feedback from council members, an early stage kind of a thing. And it became seen as, well, it's got to go to the land use committee first, when that was never really the intent. And so it kind of grew beyond its britches a little bit, which is why we kind of killed it and said, let's just do it in committee of the whole anyway. And I don't think it's broke right now. I think it's good. If the developer wants other council feedback earlier than that, they're free to give us a call or shoot us an email like they've been doing.
Do we have a consensus to keep doing the way we've been doing? Okay.
Hey, the reason I chose to do this in the work session is there's really nothing here that requires a resolution or a formal adoption, because it's just you're choosing to what your commitments are.
Makes it easier just to chat about it too.
Yep. So this is the end of what you'll see with this. I will notify the different boards of who their contacts will be where there's a change.
So are we doing a utility rate one?
Oh, sorry. Did you want to do the utility rate and enterprise fund? That committee hasn't ever met that I'm aware of.
A year ago, that's what I thought was the definition.
Well, that's the question is do we need that committee and do we want that committee?
There was discussion previously with the prior council that really is kind of a subset of budget and audit and could probably fall under budget and audit. That's what I recall.
So then my question would be, let's leave it the way it's been and fall under budget. So for next year, just so we don't have to worry about this, do you take out those ones that we've already decided not to do?
We need to amend council rules because those committees are listed in council rules as subcommittees of the council.
I just don't, we want to take another time next year trying to get committees that don't exist.
It'll give us a chance to figure out what we're doing with like mayoral appointments.
Yeah, I think you could talk about this during a committee of the whole on talking about some of the amendments coming to council. And that's all I have on this topic. You still have.
We have a second, and before work session, can I be so bold to chime in, Chair, for one request?
Yeah, there were some other committees that you were talking about.
Yeah, at the retreat this weekend, there was a talk about implementing public art. We're anxious to do that. We'd like a couple of council members to be willing to be on an informal committee to give a little bit of guidance and feedback on selecting public art.
I'm gonna volunteer Zach right up top, since he's the one that's spearheading this. I'm gonna volunteer me too.
So you got Pamela and Zach. Did you need another one?
Two is great. Three, no more than three.
I'd be interested.
Okay, thank you.
So who was that one?
Jacob Bloom and Michelle.
Okay. Did you have any others?
That's it.
Okay. All right, that's all I have for this. You could go 15 or 20 minutes, but I don't know that you'll be able to get both items in. The open is about 20 minutes by itself.
I don't anticipate taking 20 minutes.
Well, I anticipate taking longer on the next one for compensation unless nobody has anything to say. All right, let's
do.
I'll take a straw poll there. Do you guys want to talk for the 15 minutes about compensation, or do you want to adjourn and get ready for the next meeting, which is not until 7?
Can we do OPMA?
Can you do it in 15 minutes and 10 seconds?
I just think we need more time.
Absolutely. Can we let him do it in 15?
Yeah, that's the question.
Absolutely do open in 15
I think
minutes.
we should hurry.
Okay, let's do open.
Okay. So Alan, will you, in our meeting Friday, will you talk to me and Kayleen about moving the compensation to the next?
Yeah, we've got capacity in the next work session.
No, we've got 14 minutes and 50 seconds.
Go.
Going.
Here's the good thing about OPMA is that we're all familiar with it already, right? So there's not really anything new or revolutionary. But as we know, OPMA has required for a long time that there be annual training. So I want to make sure that we're compliant with that. We take the time to go through what the law requires here. Whenever I'm thinking about OPMA, I always like to start with the general intent as stated at the beginning of the statute. It's looking to have the state, its agencies, political subdivisions take actions openly and conduct deliberations openly.
Basically, whenever there's a question about OPMA, I think we try to favor the side of taking actions openly, but also conducting deliberations openly. Actions is obvious, mostly because we can't take actions if they're not done in an open meeting. Deliberations gets a little bit more nuanced, I guess you could say. We can look at that a little bit more. Generally speaking, OPMA requires that any meeting of a public body be open to the public. OPMA also sets forth framework for notice requirements, record keeping, all of the other kind of general structure that we're familiar with, and then also contains some exceptions to the general requirements. I like to always keep in mind as we're working through OPMA training that a huge chunk of the OPMA compliance for the city council is taken care of by other people in the city. Cindy Quick does a wonderful job taking care of notice requirements, meeting or minutes, posting all of that. I don't think there's enough thanks that we could give her to, properly thank her for all the work that she does. It's a tremendous amount. Tangi also helps out a lot with notice requirements for public meetings. When you get the chance, please tell them thank you because they very much deserve it. When we're looking at whether or not OPMA applies, the first question is, does it apply to the body that you're looking at? This is the definition that we're dealing with when we're talking about the city council. City council clearly applies as a public body. It's created by Utah statute, consists of 2 or more persons, supported by tax revenue, vested with authority to make decisions regarding the public's business. Here, we've seen a little bit of a change in the definition of a meeting. In the 2024 session, Representative Dunnigan made some changes to the definition of a meeting. And if you look at the old version of the law, basically what he did is he took 2 separate definitions that existed and compressed them into just one definition now. Before there was a definition for convene and then a separate definition for meeting. And what a meeting it was when it was convened with this body of the members there. But so now instead of having 2, he brings it together. But in doing so, we kind of lose a little bit of the definition of convene. Whether that helped things or confused things more, I will leave to you to decide. But what we definitely know is that if we don't have a quorum, it's not a meeting. It's not a meeting of the city council or another public body, then it's not a meeting. If it is not a meeting that is convened by an individual with authority to convene the meeting of that body, then it is not a meeting under OPMA. Or if it's not following the process provided by law for convening the public body, then it is not a meeting. Or if it is not for the express purpose of acting as a public body to receive comment, deliberate, or take action, then it's not a meeting. Now, significance of that is that if it's not a meeting, then the requirements of OPMA for notice, record keeping, access to the information that's being shared there, they don't apply. Now, of course, when it's not a meeting, you can always elect to comply with the requirements there. You can always over disclose, overperform, provide notice when it's not strictly required. But if it doesn't meet the definition of a meeting, then it is not required to comply with the provisions of OPMA. Like I said, with the notice, staff takes care of all of this for us, but you'll hear talk sometimes about whether or not we complied with the notice requirements of 24 hours. The notice requirement's different if it's a public hearing or some specific meetings require different terms or periods of notice beforehand. But 24 hours is the general rule. And then also in the slide, we have the general information that needs to be included in that notice. Places where the notice needs to be given, again, staff takes care of this for us. It's mostly just to help all of us appreciate the work that they do because it's not simple. The reason that notice is important is that if notice isn't given, then that ties the hands of the body in what we're able to accomplish during that meeting. We can't consider or act upon a matter which is brought up that is not on the agenda unless it's brought up by a member of the public and at the discretion of the presiding officer, the council chair. And you can't allow discussion about an item to occur, but you can't take action on it until it's been properly noticed in a future meeting, complying with all the notice requirements. Of course, there is some allowance for emergency meetings that allow for a short period of time if there's effort made to notify everybody and if the requirements for an emergency meeting have been satisfied. Closed meetings are another area where OPMA is frequently applicable, requires some consideration and some caution to make sure that we're doing it right. Any meeting is an open meeting unless there is a basis to close it. In order to close it, you have to have a quorum present. It has to be a properly noticed meeting beforehand. You have to have a 2/3 of the vote to support closing it. Unless it's required to be closed, but really the number of situations that require closure for a city council are almost zero. So we're dealing with the 2/3 of the members vote. Yep, yeah. There is a question that comes up from time to time that I've encountered where there's a question about whether or not the closed meeting has to be included on the agenda. OPMA doesn't directly require that. We will frequently include it as just kind of a general item, or other bodies will include it on every meeting as a potential for a closed session. It's not a requirement under OPMA, but generally if we know that there is going to be a closed item or a closed meeting necessitated by something for the council, best practices are to include it on the agenda, and that's what we do. A couple of the most common reasons for going into a closed meeting have been listed here. Character, professional competence, or health of an individual. Collective bargaining, we don't deal with that one. Pending or imminent litigation comes up often. Purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, we've definitely dealt with that one. Security personnel or investigation into criminal conduct, any of those would be a proper reason for going into a closed session. Closed meeting requires that everything discussed during the closed session be focused on that subject or that justification for going into a closed session. Can't use that to go in and then talk about other stuff afterwards. And then, as we know, you can't take any formal action in a closed session like adopting an ordinance, a resolution, or a rule in a closed meeting. That has to be done in an open meeting. When you go in, there's some things that need to be included in the minutes of the meeting, the reason for it, location, the names of the people who are there for record keeping purposes in case the meeting was ever challenged. There are lots of reasons to make sure that we're doing closed meetings right and complying with OPMA just in general, but specifically when we're dealing with closed meetings, knowing violations or intentionally supporting somebody and violating it is a Class B misdemeanor. I'm not aware that that's ever been charged. I've never seen it happen, but it is out there. And so particularly when we're dealing with closed meetings, we want to make sure that we're being mindful of the way that we do it and do it right. Otherwise, we want to make sure we're complying with OPMA, 1, because it's the right thing to do. 2, because failure to comply with OPMA could leave actions open to a suit to avoid the action that's been taken. You can also see that OPMA authorizes plaintiffs to come in and bring an action to compel compliance. There is an attorney fee provision that's applicable in there, so it can be expensive and can require us changing the way that we're doing things. So we just want to comply. And again, mostly because it's the right thing to do. One thing to keep in mind as we're looking at it, this is a newer provision that was re-adopted in the 2024 session. And it's a prohibition on taking actions with the intent to circumvent OPMA, is the way that I think of it. What it says is that if there is a quorum of people, they can't intentionally act together outside a meeting in a concerted and deliberate way to predetermine what's going to happen in the meeting. I think this is a reason why it's a good idea not to have committees with 4 people on them going forward, so we don't open ourselves up to a challenge under this. If we're going to have a quorum there, we should just do it as a public meeting for the council. Or if there's a meeting of some other type where we're going to have 4 or more people from the council there, that's going to require action from the council, best thing to do would be to do that in an open meeting.
So there's no action required, it's just an informational thing, doesn't need to be a public meeting.
Right, yeah,
Like our town hall the other day.
sure, yeah.
As long as you're not making decisions.
Right, or if there's not going to be some action coming down, decisions, you're spot on.
And you gotta be careful not to discuss it. So
Unless we're a political caucus.
Well, so parties don't apply, right?
it's like,
Wait, it says political caucus, whatever the hell that means.
Well, I would presume political caucus is political party.
I guess I'm saying in the town hall, we're okay to meet. But if we start going off onto a decision type subject, we have to stop.
It would be, yeah, that would be my advice, is to not predetermine the action that's going to be taken later. Any other questions? Did I keep it under 15? You did.
You did, good job.
You did a good job.
All right.
Give him a raise, Mayor.
Hey, raise your seat up.
One can get kind of tricky and there is room for interpretation. If you have questions or concerns about something, please let me know. Call anytime. Happy to talk it through. Again, recognizing that sometimes provisions can be read differently, but want to make sure that we are getting it right because it's important. So that. Great.
All right. I will declare the committee of the whole for today adjourned. And we will reconvene in 30 minutes at City Council at 7 p.m.